Are we ready to go? Sure. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Weiss. Thank you for being here. This is the public hearing for the Community Preservation Commission. With me is Beth Green, other committee members, Beth Green, Donald Holland, Jim Jones, Steve Gazzillo. Some of our other committee members unfortunately had other commitments or were out of town, so they could not be here tonight. The meeting, I think this is the first time in the 7 or 8 years of the CPC that any meeting has been televised and recorded. So bear with us a little bit. I would ask during the public comments if people have presentations that they want to make. I've been asked to ask you to come up to that microphone because that way they can pick it up because the mics won't pick up from over there. The purpose for this meeting is statutorily, we are required to have a public hearing every year on the applications. That's the statutory purpose, but the practical purpose for us, at least speaking for myself, is that this is an opportunity for we as a committee to get more information and obtain more information about the various projects, and for the town as a whole and everybody here that's here today to be able to make presentations to us and answer, and we can try to answer questions or have questions answered. This is Ron Manso, another one of our members. We are both being recorded and televised, Ron, so I want to give you a fair warning. So there are this year 14 different applications for a total which now somewhat is close to $1 million in total funding. These are all on the town website. I know many of you have been here either for one or another meeting previously that we've had as a CPC. What I'd like to do, both because it's logical as much as anything else, and also because apparently there's a select board meeting. Stephen, was it a select board meeting? Yeah, at 8 o'clock. Is there of the 14 projects, the first 7 of them are by the town, and then the next 7 are by private entities. So I'm going to go through these 1 through 14 in that order, if we can. So the first one is if anybody wants to make a presentation or has any questions or comments about the project 2014, which is the application for the Blinn tennis courts. I will add that and I have not had a chance to have this put up on the town website yet. There has been an amended application that I received from Mr. Rabel on January 27th. So with that, if anybody has any questions, comments, please feel free to step up to the mic. Well, it could be anybody.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Stephen Crane. I'm town manager for Town of Long Meadow, and I'm happy to either present our recommendations or simply answer questions. I can go through them briefly, or I know you guys have the project summaries that I'd be looking at as well, so I invite any questions, or if you want further explanation on a particular project, I'm happy to do that.
Well, maybe the first thing I'll ask is, at least, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead of any of the other members, the initial application on the tennis courts was it was and still is, at least from the application that's been presented to us is for $200,000. Mm-hmm. The total cost of the project it's now been, and this is this is on the amended application, is for a total of $675,000. I think the total cost on it. It's now been reduced down to $675,000. I don't know if anybody here has questions about the new numbers.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, the project which has been, excuse me, received some funding commitment in the past is obviously it's a very expensive project. The design has been evolving over the past year, and we have designs for the court replacement. I think if they're not completed, they're very near completion. So the fuller scope of the project is now known. If we are approved for funding, we'd be, I think, ready to proceed with bidding, and work would, I think, commence in the springtime. The reason why we amended originally we were requesting half of the funds needed to complete the project from the Community Preservation Act funds, but as we rethought it internally, we felt that if the committee was willing to use some of the funds that it has in reserve that are set aside for recreational purposes, we felt this would be an excellent project. It is a truly recreational function. The tennis courts are there, open to the public, and really it's more any funding that has a specific purpose. When you have a project that meets that specific purpose, you're better off using that specified funding for the project versus general funds that can be used for any project, because they are much more limited largely because of Proposition 2.5. So to some extent, it's just a reshuffling of the deck, the amended request for additional funds. It's not that the scope of the project expanded in between our original application this year and our supplemental one that you received last week. It's that it was a prioritization of funding shift. So.
Well, and I guess I think I know what you're saying, but I think I still need a little bit of a clarification, because the and just by background, between town meeting and the CPC in prior years, $300,000 has been allocated towards the tennis courts. The application that we have in front of us is still for $200,000, which would get to $500,000. The total cost of it is $675. I understand that, but I guess I'm wondering. But it sounds like, and I just really want to get clarification. Are you asking us for $375,000, not $200,000?
The balance of the project, yes.
Okay, because
I thought that an amended application had been submitted.
Well, it was, but it still says the amount funded for the funding request is for $200,000.
It may have been an additional 200.
Okay, well, that's why we wanted to get clarification.
I apologize for it being confusing, and the intent was to ask for we rounded it up to 200,000, but it really is the balance of the project cost, which is, as you noted, 375.
So is it possible for you to send us something by email to Steve so that we have exactly what you really are asking for?
I honestly thought you had that. I'm sorry.
Okay, that would be helpful then.
All right. Okay, and
We're voting Monday.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I should add that. We are not,
We're voting
we're
on
not taking
Monday.
any votes today. We have our regularly scheduled meeting on Monday night, and that's when we intend to be taking votes on all of these, if at all possible.
So you're saying it's 400,000 that you're asking for? I'm taking minutes. I want to make sure I write down the right thing.
It's rounding up to 700. It's a $675,000 project. We have 300 already from previous years. The balance would be 375, or rounding up 400. So yes.
All right, and I don't know whether this is a fair question or not, but there's 7 applications that have been submitted for the town. Is there a prioritization that the town has? And I don't know if you can speak for the entire town. I realize that may be a loaded question, that what your comments may not, you may not be binding on what other people may think.
On behalf of all mankind.
But from your point of view, I guess, if you could, is there any sort of priority level on all of these for you?
Well, I think all of the work is needed. I don't think there are any unneeded or unnecessary projects that have been submitted. I would say that, obviously the tennis courts are a big number, but the town has already expressed its support for this project in previous votes and in previous allocations of funding, and when you get that kind of momentum, you usually want to capitalize on it and get the project done. There's no doubt that the courts need to be revitalized. But no, I think they're all important projects. I know it sounds like a bit of a dodge, but they're all, because they fulfill different needs and different purposes. It's a little tough to rank them because of, they are, to one constituency, the Wolf Swamp Fields is the most important project. To another constituency, the Blinn Tennis Courts is the most important project. So I think it's not for me. These are all projects that we feel need to be done in this next round of funding.
Mr. Chairman, might I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I know, Jim, you had a question. You looked like you had a question, so we'll just go down the line.
What happens if, when the contractor gets into the project, the costs exceed $675,000, will the town pick up the difference?
The 675 does include a fairly generous contingency.
How much?
I think it's 15% or something like that. A 10% contingency. So I would say that's usually enough to cover it. And there are certainly, and there's many examples of where when we've run in that situation, we've used in-house labor to offset costs, and we would see where there'd be opportunities to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, when we had our previous meeting with the town engineer from DPW, I was under the impression that the balance of the project was coming from other funds, other capital funds from the town, and not all from us. That's not,
Well, I guess that's a
That's
good
not correct
question
now.
for Mr. Crane.
the engineer had explained that we were going to supply the $200,000, which makes a total of $5 that we've given, and the balance would be coming out of capital funds.
Again, the Community Preservation Act funds have, you all know this, has the specific purposes, and one of the specific purposes they can be used on is recreation. This is a purely recreational project, and so after we evaluated our own applications subsequent to that meeting, we determined internally that using funds that are not otherwise earmarked for recreation, that could be used for equipment, heating upgrades, any of the other many projects that need funding, we felt, and because we are aware that the Community Preservation Act funds have built up sufficient reserves to cover the cost of these projects, if the committee was willing to expend those funds, it would be a much more efficient utilization of resources to have this all funded through the recreational funds through CPA.
Steve?
Question regarding amount of funding. Let's say that the committee decides this year to do 150,000 into it, or 200,000 would give you a total of 500,000, if I'm correct. So would that be enough to get the project started, or do you have to have the full lump sum all in? Because obviously with so many demands, the ability to stretch it over several years or phase the project, so to speak.
There are certain projects that can be phased. I don't view this one as one of them specifically, especially because it's a somewhat specialized installation, and you would pay a premium by splitting it into two jobs. The contractor would mobilize one time, mobilize their demolition equipment and all of the other specialized stuff they do to tennis courts. So it would be more expensive to phase it.
So it would be completed before the next round of applications would allow you to seek additional funding?
We wouldn't be able to do the job with just the 500.
Beth? Ms. Green?
Thanks.
So, the way I heard what you just said, because about the dollar amount, is that it's a $675,000 project, and you have a very substantial contingency already built in there. Why would you be asking for 400 if that were the case? Because you're rounding up a substantial amount of money that would then be taken from Wolf Swamp Fields, which is $35,000 project, or $93,000 for the track. That's an additional $25,000 that might come out of that project. So I guess I'm wondering why you're rounding up by the other $25,000.
Well, like I said, we have to we had to apply for an amount, and I guess, like I said, I would characterize it as the balance of the project, even though the number says, or make it up to 400. We have to bid the project as well, and the actual number will be known once the project is bid. I mean, it's an estimate. But certainly we don't want to park available funds on the sidelines while we're waiting for the full cost of this project to be known. But we need to be conservative, because if you if you allocate too much, if the bids come in less than the allocation, then you can do the project and the funds go back into the account for projects either supplemental in a given year or next year. And since the CPA has funds that are in reserve that haven't been spent every year, you do run balances. If your bids come in greater than the amount you've requested, then you're in a much more difficult position.
I understand exactly what you're saying, except I'm confused because the original application said 750. The revised application
Yeah,
said
there was some scope we took out.
675.
Yeah, we took out some scope. Like, there was some sidewalks that were part of the design, we took that out. Rather than pay the contractor price, that's work that could be done in-house as a part of our sidewalk program.
Okay.
There was some work to the parking lot we took out, simply to reduce the overall cost, to reduce the demands on CPA funds, and make the project more affordable for this year.
Right, and in tandem with the question that was asked by one of the other gentlemen, if it turned out we gave you the 200,000, you still have the option of approaching capital planning for the other 200,000? The capital planning committee? Which is where
They've already reviewed the capital projects and made their recommendations, and I don't want to speak for them. But like I said, it would be, recreational funds should be used for recreational projects. Funds that could be used for pavement maintenance and more general fund purposes should be, because they're so precious. We don't have enough to do everything we need to do. And so things like general fund monies that can be used with more flexibility on a variety of projects, equipment, things like that, should be preserved for those purposes, whereas a recreational project should be funded with recreational funds.
I thought at one point last year, we heard about a Green Communities initiative that might support lighting for the tennis courts. Has anybody explored that avenue?
We haven't. We did receive a Green Communities designation and a grant, and the Select Board actually voted to pursue a street lighting purchase and conversion project for those grant funds, primarily because it will save the town substantially more money in the future than the tennis court lights. I have talked to the town engineer about speccing out LED lights for the court versus standard, sodium halide or one of those other standard, stadium lights. But that's, something we can look at as we get into the bidding. It can be a bid alternate or something like that.
Okay, one concern I have about the lights, in particular the tennis courts, is going by there at 10 o'clock at night, nobody in sight, lights burning all over the place. Is there going to be any controls put in place to capture that?
Yeah, one of the reasons why the courts need to be upgraded is not only are they cracking, but the timer is old, and new lighting controls will be a part of the project. So, and hopefully that'll be the end of that problem, because I agree with you.
Any further questions from the committee? Is there anybody else who would like to speak, either speak for or against this project, or who have questions for us?
I have a general question.
Sure.
Can you tell me how much money the Community Preservation Committee has with which to work this year?
Yeah, let me try to give as complete an answer as I can, because I think this will answer questions for a lot of people. The total amount of money that is that we have available is $1,513,000 and change. Having said that, some of that is allocated for specific things by statute, and some of that is undesignated. In the open space category, the account, if you will, if you want to think about this as separate buckets, the open space bucket is about $295,000. The historic preservation bucket is about $40,500. Community housing is approximately $194,000, and the undesignated funds are approximately $983,000.
Thank you.
Sure.
General question.
Sure. Would you mind identifying yourself?
Christopher Carr.
Oh, thank you. I recognize you from the last meeting now. Thank you.
You stated that there was $1 million of proposals. Does that include the new extra 200,000 we're talking about here, or is that?
No.
We're actually looking for $1.2 million now.
That's correct. It is now about $1.2 million, with that clarification.
Thank you. If anybody has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, because they can't hear you. Is it?
We'll just
Mr. Grant?
repeat them.
If you want to, well, yeah, if you can either come up to the mic so they can hear, or we can just repeat the question.
Hi, Alex Grant, member of the Select Board.
Good evening.
Are you entertaining comments on the track or just the tennis courts right now?
I thought logically it might make sense to go through them sequentially. The
Okay.
first one was really for the tennis courts,
Okay.
because that's our project number one, and
Okay.
by coincidence, it happens to be the largest project as well. So I don't know if there are if there are no other comments on the tennis court project, then we can go, then maybe we can go to questions and comments on
On the track.
on application number 2, which is for the high school track resurfacing. So, Mr. Grant?
Yes. I just wanted to offer some personal observations about the track. I am a pretty avid runner. I've used the track over the years, and I was one of the coaches for the youth track program last spring, and I can say that the condition is poor. I've run on a lot of tracks over my years, and I mean, it's really not in a condition to have meets. My understanding is they don't have meets on it. I mean, there are places where, you know, you could trip. It's not in good condition. And I can tell you that it's used quite a lot. It's quite a resource. It's not just the youth track program, it's the high school program. There are community members. Sometimes I do workouts at 9 o'clock at night, you know, and there are other people out there. You know, a lot of people like just walking around the track because it's a safe place to walk. So I just see a lot of value in that project. And you know, I imagine if we were talking about a football field and we couldn't play football games, you know, in Longmeadow, I think we'd want to repair that, and I think that's sort of where we are with respect to the track.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for any?
I have a question. It may sound a little, from left field, a little gruff, but you'll excuse me now.
Sure.
When we spend $75 million for the school, couldn't we have allocated $75,000 for the track? I mean, everybody knew it was in bad shape then. I mean, that was 1/1000th of 1% of the school budget.
Do you mind if I?
No, go ahead,
Sure.
Mr. Clark.
And
if you can,
actually, it's good that Mr. Clark's come out, because I have no idea. I was not, I'm responsible for a number of things that's going on now, but
You could have
I
saved,
wasn't-
you could have
I
saved
wasn't
3
involved.
trees and put down a track.
I'll identify myself first. Michael Clark, Chair of the School Committee, and that's a really great question that we've received every year that this project has appeared before both community preservation and capital planning. You know, not to dredge up too much of the high school issue, but when they went out to bid and when the state was awarding, or actually telling us what they would fund as far as a building, they gave us a bunch of menu options. They gave us model schools, and we came up with a design like this. But one of the things that the state would not reimburse for was this section that you're sitting in right now, this reimbursable section, as well as the pool. And so when it came to cost value engineering, what was, you know, something we wanted included, we wanted to save the pool. The track at the time was in relatively decent shape. It was not at the end of its life. And so it didn't make it into the total project scope. Especially because at the time the discussion had been something more significant in line with building a newer stadium in general. But the project that you guys have before you tonight is, you know, it's a much smaller project in the sense that we're not asking for a stadium. We're not asking for much beyond a track. The fact of the matter is that this track is at the end of its useful life. And as Mr. Grant pointed out, there are a number of safety issues that we are concerned with as a board, and that the DPW has concerned themselves with as well.
I understand,
Yep.
I understand the hazards that it has, but I believe, I wasn't on the board at the time, but I
Sure.
believe when this was first put down in what, 99 or 2000?
It was actually the mid-1997.
It had a shelf life of longer than this,
99? It's 99.
99.
So,
It had a shelf life of 13, 14 years, according to the
sure,
specifications.
well, we're about 15 years into that at this point.
But my objection still stands, that we could have saved a little bit here, and now your $93,000 for this, it wants to go to the Blinn tennis courts.
Well, and certainly you make a very valid and fair point, and, I was not on the school building committee at the time, but, at this point, I'm not sure how valid it is or how relevant it is to drudge up why something wasn't funded 4.5 years ago when we're asking for funding now. That's neither here nor there, in my opinion, but I certainly see the validity in what you're asking.
Are there questions by committee members as to this project? Are there any other comments? And if you wouldn't mind going up to the mic, since I've already been asked twice now to do that. And if you could identify yourself, that would be helpful.
I'm Jessica Young. I live at 165 Converse Street. And back in 1997, I was one of the primary proponents of having a new track put at Longmeadow High School. And we did significant fundraising and raised about $100,000 to get the track project started. On May 11th, 1999, I can remember it because it was my birthday, I spoke at the town meeting requesting an additional $200,000 from the free cash account to fund the track, because the track project had blossomed into more than just a track. It included new bathrooms, because we had Santa cans back then. It included a new area for the Key Club to serve food. Previous to that, they were using just water to rinse their hands when they were in the little shed where they were serving hot dogs and things. So our project really grew from a $100,000 track, which we had raised $100,000 for, to almost a $350,000 project. There were many community groups that supported this. They supported it by purchasing bricks, which you see engraved on the concession stand. I went back to my notes and saw that we had gotten donations from hockey booster clubs, football booster clubs, tennis groups, soccer groups, lacrosse groups, the Longmeadow Over 60 Club, alumni, local businesses, Greater Springfield area businesses who depended upon Longmeadow residents for their support, the members of the Appropriation Committee 13 years ago, as well as Capital Planning, Parks and Rec, the School Committee, and even the Board of Selectmen purchased bricks for this project. And the reason that all of these community groups got involved was because they realized it was not just a school project. It was something that the entire community could use. And to this day, I take great pride in walking by and seeing 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds out there walking, getting exercise. One of the reasons the track was put in was because the cinder track was dangerous. Now our 13 or 14-year-old rubberized track is at that point, and it really should be replaced.
Thank you. Any other comments, comments or questions on this project?
I just have to add one more thing. I mean, the reason I came up is I actually didn't get to say anything about why I'm here tonight. The school committee voted, and I've spoken to you before about this. This was our #1 priority this year. We realize that not everything we prioritize gets funded or will ever get funded, but we feel very strongly that because of the high volume of use between both student groups at Longmeadow High School, including, I heard Mr. Grant mention our football team, but our also all-state winning track team. They use this track on a continual basis, and we've had to move events to other communities, especially some of the field events, which we have taken care of. But certainly there are things that we're not able to do because of the condition of the track. Last year, this was before this board, and I understand that it was not passed by this board, which is fine. But at the time, the DPW director had said that he would be shutting the track down because of how dangerous it was. We poured approximately, how much was it, $15,000 into repairing it? Does anybody on the select board know that number? I believe that we allocated, DPW allocated about $15,000 last year to repair the track. It might be a little bit high, but right now we're just doing patchwork jobs, and that's not safe. And if you've taken an opportunity to walk the track, you'll note that it's coming up like swaths of carpeting. We need to redo this track. I mean, this is the #1 priority for the school committee this year, simply because it is a health and safety risk. And we certainly don't want to see any member of the community, whether they are a high school student or a resident enjoying the track in the middle of the day or on the weekend, injuring themselves or being, harmed in any way because they're using it. So I strongly support this project. School committee strongly supports it, and I ask for your support on Monday night when you vote on these projects. So thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions on this project, let's move to number 3, which is the Greenwood Park pool improvements, which is for $177,000. Is there anybody here to speak with respect to this? Mr. Crane?
Yes, actually, this is a project that I can, when I presented my recommendations for capital to the capital planning committee, this was not one of my recommendations. The pool definitely needs upgrades, but there's a larger analysis about the use of both pools and how efficient we are with using both of them, and the trend of, how our trend's going with season pass sales and use and things like that. And because I haven't really been here that long, I haven't had a chance to drill down in here. This I think is I know the Department of Public Works has it as a priority because they do have to spend a lot of time, holding it together. The work is definitely needed, but if this was a project that, for the sake of other priorities, was resubmitted next year, we could make it work and limp along.
Do you have any, I'm going to paraphrase a question that was asked about the tennis courts, and I don't know whether you know the answer to this question or not, but the question was, if some of the money is funded, can some of the work be done this year, or is it really an all or nothing kind of proposition that you need all of the money?
I don't know the scope of work on this well enough to say. I mean, I'm sure, it does, I think, need new filters and pump equipment. I don't know because the pool leaks tremendously.
Yeah, it's 5,000 gallons.
Yeah.
They were going to lift it up.
Yeah. I mean, it's built into the side of a hill. I mean, there are broader issues. So could you do some of the work to the building and the pump equipment and filtration equipment and not do this? Possibly so. But again, that would not solve the overall problem. And like most things, the biggest problem is the most expensive one.
Which is replacing the pumps and the leaks.
Well, the leaks in the pool.
Yeah.
Rehabilitating the pool.
All right. Other questions from the committee?
No. I know this is out of sequence, but I do want to add, in terms of the track, I do want to reiterate what the chair of the school committee did say, because it's something I have learned in my brief time here. The state reimburses for about half of the cost of the school for certain things. Had the track project been done through the general contract with Gilbane, it would have been 100% town side funding, even under our contract with the state, and therefore would have been more expensive. So it truthfully is the more cost efficient way to do it is to do it as a separate project.
All right, thank you. Are any other questions or comments concerning project number 3 Mr. Holland?
I have a general question with regard to the town requested projects, and that is, for any of the projects, are there any intended further constructions that the town has already have a five-year plan for example, or a 10-year plan?
We do have a 5-year capital improvement plan, yes.
For each of the applications that have been submitted by the town, can we get a hold of that? My reason for saying that is there's no sense the commission voting for fixing something that the town intends to gut entirely 4 or 5 years from now, or 6 years from now. For example, the pool, where you mentioned that there are greater problems involved. And it would be helpful to us if we could have, those 5-year plans or 2-year plans.
I assure you that everything you have in front of you is consistent with our 5-year plan, and, this is still, even though it's under the jurisdiction of this committee, this is still taxpayer funds, and we in town government have a fiduciary responsibility to be good stewards of those funds. And so we would never put together a project that was going to be a short-term thing unless there was a safety reason for it. So I think, the shorter answer is yes. And one of the things the chair and I have talked about, along with the members of the capital planning committee and the finance committee and other boards and committees, is a more integrated approach towards capital planning going forward. And I think we're going to do that. We've certainly started that, but we're going to do more of that, so each committee understands where the priorities are and where the funding streams can and should come from. But I am happy to provide the committee with a copy of the, trying to see if I have a copy I could just hand you, but I don't know that I do. A copy of the 5-year capital improvement plan. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments about project number 3? Then we'll try to move this on to project number 4, which is the Stores Library Handicap Access application. This is for $72,600, and the first 3 projects, for what it's worth, were for recreation, under the recreation category or rubric. This one is under historic preservation. So, Ms.
Hi, I am
Kappenman?
Karen Kappenman, Library Director at Stores Library, and I would like to turn on the projector, if I may, so I can show some pictures. Is that all right?
If you've got the technology available to do it, that would be great. I'm learning new things every time.
I'll try to be quick. Victor gave me a quick lesson on this. And since pictures speak 1,000 words and we don't really have time for 1,000 words, I thought this would be the best way to present this, if I can get it to. Whoops, did it go on?
Do we need to turn down lights?
There we go. However.
That doesn't look like the library.
No, that's not my
picture. I know that guy.
Oh, no, I'm not having. I don't, does anybody know, the Air app on here is not coming up, the Apple TV? Nope.
No idea.
Oh, it was here earlier. Okay. Well, I don't, yeah, sorry.
It's interesting.
It's under your settings.
It should be right here. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
I'm enjoying these
Spent a lot of time in
pictures.
this room,
It's
I
supposed
tell
to be
ya.
right there, but I don't see it.
Okay, are you on the right Wi-Fi?
We'd like to build an expansive national park. There's some pictures of what we're thinking about.
With both penguins and volcanoes.
That's gorgeous. I like the
It was
lonely
in the middle
gorillas.
last time,
Yeah.
it's just disappeared now.
I don't like that.
Gorillas and whale sharks all in one bunch.
In the meantime, we have had several people, members of the public, who have come in and voiced their concerns about the condition of the ramp, the handicapped accessible ramp for the library. And it was my goal to show you pictures. I did print off some pictures for you to view, and so you can. This ramp has posed a lot of problems for people, not only those with needs for wheelchairs or assistive devices to get into the library, but also for young families with strollers and children and people with large bags of books and arms full of books trying to get up and down the ramp. The ramp does not meet the ADA requirements for width in one section, and it has 4 very sharp 90-degree turns that it takes that where there is not an ample radius for turning, or at least what is required by the ADA. Back in 2008, I believe there was a townwide facilities study that was done by J.C. JCJ Architecture. At that time, they said the existing ramp does not conform to dimensional requirements of national standards. Some spalled concrete exists at the exterior concrete ramps and steps and around embedded railing posts. They also said the ramp is poured concrete. This is just a description, and it is complete with handrails. The ramp slope appears to meet the allowable slope. However, the clear space on certain sections of the ramp appears to be less than the requisite 36-inch clear minimum. A turning area at each change in direction on the ramp, which will accept a 60-inch circle, is not provided. A ramp from the drive aisle to the sidewalk does not appear to meet the regulations for curb cuts. The side wings of the ramp exceed the 1 to 10 maximum side slope and create a tripping hazard. And then adding to the tripping hazards, we have cracks in the ramp, we have concrete that is crumbling, and it has been patched several times. This is what I have pictures of. Let me hand you the printed pictures, since we're not going to get to use the cool technology. These are pictures of the ramp. This is also pictures of the driveway and the sidewalk, which is another proposal from the DPW to repair the driveway and sidewalks. So this is kind of a unified presentation here. I believe, like I said, I have letters here from people who were not able to come tonight, who would like to express their concerns about the access. I'd like to answer any questions that you might have. We also have people here who are willing to speak to the needs of the repair of this ramp.
All right, thank you. I guess first, any questions from any committee members?
I have one. You have multiple projects that you've requested money for. Which one's your top priority?
The ramp and the driveway and sidewalks are definitely our top priority. They all work together.
That's the two projects. You're not picking one out of the over the other.
You have to walk on the sidewalk to get to the ramp. So I don't know how we can really split them up.
Is there a reason why they're not one project then?
I am not sure. I'm not the one who wrote the proposal. The DPW director wrote the proposal. I'm here in support of the proposal.
Well, my recollection, and I'm looking at...
Last year they were together.
Oh, there we go.
Well, and my recollection, and looking at both applications, and I don't know whether you know the answer to this question, maybe Mr. Crane does, but both of these, it does say that both of these projects would be submitted as part of the capital request for fiscal year 2015. Do you know anything about whether those have been?
Recently heard that they were denied.
Okay.
And, can I ask you a question?
Oh, absolutely.
I wondered about the sidewalk driveway. Is that something where town employees could potentially do the work rather than paying an outside contractor to do that work?
Again, I am not, I think Mike Rabel would be the one to answer that
Maybe
question.
Mr. Crane could answer that? Is whether, yeah. I was asking whether the sidewalk and driveway improvements to Storrs Library?
The handicap accessible improvements?
No.
No, the ramp.
yeah.
The other one, which is, there's the
driveway
library
itself.
ramp access is one grant application. The second one is for the sidewalk and driveway improvements. That's a different grant.
Different application.
And so my question, it's a different grant application, whether that work or any part of that work, in fact, could be done by town employees as opposed to paying an outside contractor.
I'm sorry. I think the idea was to try to do it at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. When it comes to concrete work, I think the intent, even it's two separate applications, both projects are needed, and I think the intent was to have the opportunity to do all of it at the same time. And especially when you're working with concrete, there's an economy of scale, again, with a single contractor doing everything. I'm sure if it comes to just replacing sidewalks and things like that, we do have the in-house capability to do it. But from an efficiency standpoint and from a continuity standpoint with the entryway work, it makes more sense to do it all as one project. And I apologize for not knowing the answer to this, but my guess is that it's separated so we understand what it's worth, but I think you're better off having one contractor do all the concrete work. I think anybody who's had concrete poured at their house knows.
Yeah, well, and I think actually part of the answer to the question is when I take a look at these estimates, for instance, and I'm looking at Project 5 now, not
Right,
Project
yeah.
4. It says driveway removal and repaving of asphalt driveway, there's a quote of $165 per ton. I think that's mostly material costs as opposed to labor cost. We can ask Mike Rabel that at some point, but I think a lot of this is material costs.
Yeah, I will say that. The other thing is we don't really do asphalt work. Nearly all of our asphalt work. Concrete work we can do. Asphalt work is a different thing. So we contract out all of our asphalt work.
So yes, you do concrete, no, you don't do asphalt.
Correct. A lot of I think, not to get too technical, but asphalt gets made at a plant, it's oil-based, and it comes in a heated machine, whereas concrete comes in a bag and you mix it in a drum. So.
Done it?
Can I ask a question? We were also told at our previous meeting that all of these projects were submitted to capital planning for funds, and you just mentioned that yours was, but it was denied, correct? How many of the 14 projects were submitted, and how many have been denied by capital planning?
Well,
It would have been
seven.
seven. It would have been seven.
Well, seven, the
Seven.
first seven.
I don't want to speak for the capital planning. They're going to present their recommendations to the select board. I think
When?
I think the 20th. Is it the 20th?
After our
right?
meeting.
Yeah, on February 20th. So I'm sure the chair can speak with the chair of the capital planning committee to find the information. I just don't. I don't know what the protocol is.
Okay.
This is my first time at this rodeo, so I want to. I don't want to speak for the other committee.
Okay. Any further questions or comments concerning these? I guess what I'm going to do is try to merge both of these projects, numbers 4 and 5, since we already seem to have done that anyway.
You have letters? Do you have
I
copies of
do
those
have
letters for
letters,
Steve?
yes. I will leave these with you. Do you want me to read them, or I'd rather give
No,
the people that are here a
You
chance
can
to?
just give them to me. What I'll try to do is I'll scan them in and circulate them to the committee over the weekend.
Yeah, either.
There's 7 copies of each letter, and these
Oh.
are the originals.
And I will scan these in and circulate them. Are there any separate comments with respect to application number 5? Mr. Hoff? You can identify yourself for the record?
Bill Hoff. Just, I don't know if any of you all had a chance to go by and see the handicap ramp. And I did a few years ago when this project was submitted. You have to wonder who designed this and thought it was useful as a handicap ramp. The number of twists and turns make it impossible to use. So I really think this is a worthwhile project to improve, to make it actually the library handicap accessible. It is not well designed. This would make it usable. So I
You don't have,
asked the committee to support that.
you don't have to scan them, she brought copies.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right,
one
thank
for
you.
each.
One more, I'm not picking on you, but I'm gonna ask you to be a little brief, only because I do want to get done tonight, but go ahead.
Okay,
I should have said that earlier.
I'll be brief. Rose Sullivan, 144 Viscount Road. As a frequent patron of the library, and although I'm not handicapped, I do make use of that when I do altruistic projects after hours. We use the ramp in order to bring in sewing machines and ironing boards and all kinds of things. But needless to say, I think what we have to look at is the fact that the ADA says that this is not up to code, and the operative word here is handicap. And I'm sure OSHA would have something to say about it, and we really need to support this project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's try to go, so that took care of projects 4 and 5. The next one is the Wolf Swamp Field improvements. This is, again, under the Recreation category. This is for $35,000.
Can we turn off the,
Oh, yeah, and if we could turn that off and turn the lights back on, that would be great. Welcome back, Mr. Crane.
Yes, briefly, and this time I mean it. This is essentially, it's a simple project. I think a lot of the expense here is for materials. I know the, it doesn't seem to be the backup here, but it essentially is, softball isn't as popular as it once was. Wolf Swamp has 2 softball fields that are underutilized. The demand for lacrosse, or fields that can be used for lacrosse and soccer and other sports that are much more popular, are in high demand, and this essentially converts, it changes the orientation of some of the fields to north and south, which will handle some of the conflicts with equipment, errant sporting equipment going into parking areas and things like that, and then it just essentially takes 2 underutilized softball fields and turns them into lacrosse soccer fields.
And if I recall correctly,
We had a lot of comments at our last meeting.
Yeah, at the meeting we had on this project the first time, Jim Russell, who's, I think, the perpetual or longtime chair of Park and Rec, said this was their #1 priority, if I recall correctly. Questions? Any of the committee members have questions for Mr. Crane?
Nope.
Is there anybody else here who would like to speak concerning this project? Okay, then we'll move on to project number 7, or application number 7, which is the community house auditorium improvements. Again, this is a combination of historic preservation and recreation, and this is for $54,000. Mr. Crane, since you're at the since you're at the microphone, I'll let you start.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, the auditorium at the community house is obviously a building from the 1920s and has been used heavily for many, many years. We do rent out the auditorium for many functions. It is actually a source of revenue for the town, a valued source of revenue for the town, and we want to continue to provide a high-quality space so people will want to rent it and continue to provide that revenue to the town. These are really these are those types of issues that floors that need to be refinished and some plaster work that needs to be done and some other things. You can see the list in the backup. If you don't handle them, they only become worse and more expensive, and so we really want to make sure we stay ahead of this so the project doesn't become, into the hundreds of thousands in a full-scale rehab. So this is an important project, and we're very proud of our facilities at the community house, and we want to make sure that they stay viable for a long time.
All right, Mr. Gazillo?
Yes. I started in the CPC with Bill Hoff, who's sitting in the back, and this community house was a project that was funded in our first year. And my only question now is, okay, every year it seems to come up with something. Well, wouldn't it be good if, I know there's a master plan somewhere, but it would be great to see where we are in that process, just so we kind of know what else to expect and how well we're doing in terms of solving the problems of that facility, which I agree is used by everyone in the town and is an important facility, but that's what's a little bit lacking in, with piecemeal every year.
I acknowledge that when you don't have the context of broader projects or planned things, it is a little difficult to make decisions in space, and it's a trust exercise for us to say we trust that you're not going to bring this forward unless it is part of a grander scheme, but we still should put it in the context of a grander scheme. And there is a facilities analysis that was done of both the community house and town hall, and I have seen it. We have a need for office space, and one of the things was, the architect, I believe, recommended possibly putting in a floor so you have 2 stories in that space, and obviously the auditorium is an important part of the facilities that we offer. But certainly, I'm happy to have that discussion, maybe not in this environment, but as a separate meeting and present that. Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm just curious, how many events do we host at Community House, and what sort of revenue are we bringing in? Are we pursuing any other events that we might want people to rent that venue?
You would ask me that, wouldn't you?
I'm sorry.
I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. It's tens of thousands of dollars in facility rentals each year, whether it's recitals or dance practices or actually some of the things that is rented for are listed on the application. So it's dances, local meetings. It's obviously our polling location for the town. So it's used a substantial amount. And right now, it's not a great venue if you want to put on some kind of live production of community theater or something because the condition is not inviting. This will help remedy that. And certainly it will put us in a much better position to market the facility.
Thank you.
I actually think that's it for me. Thank you for your time.
Well, I got you out by 8 o'clock,
Yep.
so.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for your time as well. You've been very, very helpful. And I do want to thank, I know there's several select board members here today. I do want to thank you for coming tonight. Just wanted to thank you. It's very much appreciated. And so that'll bring us now to I don't know if this is necessarily the right distinction, but what I'll call the private applications, so the ones that are not by the town. The first one is number 8, which is the gravestone restoration and improvement application. This is phase 2. Which is for $30,080, and this is under the historic preservation category. I guess first, is anybody here to speak? I'm guessing the McKees are here to speak in favor of this application. Yeah, well, that's a fair point. If there's not much to add to what was said at our meeting on January 16th, I think it was, please feel free to be brief.
I will be. My name is Al McKee, and I am on the Longmeadow Cemetery Association, and we do want to thank the town for their support in last year's project, and we're asking for funding for Phase 2. Which we did describe to the committee at our last meeting. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Any questions by any committee members?
Well, I did use your website. It's a very concise website. It lists everybody from pre-civil Revolutionary War up until now. Is there any planning in the future? Like when I wanted to find where a friend was buried, I got the date and so on where he was buried, but there's nothing as to where the gravesite is. No, all I got was a picture with an arrow pointing to number 15. I guess field 15 it's called.
Yes.
And, it could have been just written on the same line as the date, the time, so on and so forth.
We believe that we're within months of completing a on-site review. We have somebody we've hired to do a review of every single grave. And when that review's done, we're going to modify the website so that you'll actually be able to do exactly what you wanted.
Right.
It's a matter of exposing another column for the public.
Right. It took 3 or 4 emails back and forth before I was able to find out where this gentleman was buried.
We were chagrined that we could see it, but you couldn't. But we see what's going to happen. We have a little more data to put in.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for or against this project? Then I guess we'll move on to number 9, which is the Riverfront Park River Access and Recreation application. Again, this is under the recreation category. It's for $30,700. Is there anybody here to speak? Mr. Hoff, I think you filed this application. Are you here to speak in favor?
I didn't speak in favor, but one of the things when I came before the committee before, you asked me some questions and go back and look. I just wanted to update you, and I'm actually, Steve, I'll send you an email with a whole project update in terms, but the bottom line is, first of all, that, reducing the cost to $21,700. Took out some of the things, I know, that Beth said, talked about the cover, taking that out. And also, but I think the
You
most.
said the number was 21?
21.7.
Okay.
But I think the most important thing I've learned as I've done some research is that instead of trying to do this as a whole project all at once, is to try and phase it in over a couple of years. And first of all, to start with, just putting the docks in the river the first year, get those in, see what the demand is, and then find some users and talk to them and see if we want to go ahead and put the storage racks in, because they are, the storage racks and the fence, they may or may not be necessary, and let's find out from people who are actually going to use it whether they are. So that's really the big change. Instead of doing it, all at once, doing it over a couple of years, and really seeing if the demand is there for the racks and so on.
Is that in part because you'd get into questions about, well, who gets to, what the rules might be for storing things
Part
there?
of it, but I think more importantly, because I think the comments from the Conservation Commission about the vandalism and those kind of things. So if people aren't going to feel comfortable leaving kayaks or canoes down there, there's no sense in spending the money on a fence and racks to put them down there. If people aren't going to do it anyway, there's no sense in just putting them up just to do it. So I think let's get people using the recreation, using the riverfront, who are enjoying it and saying, okay, geez, no, I don't need a rack, or, geez, I really would be nice if I could just leave my kayak here and lock it up and put it in a secure area.
Interesting.
All right. And if I recall correctly, these are the kind of docks that can just be pulled out of
Yeah,
the
the docks.
DPW can.
DPW, I did include in this thing, Mike says he could do it for less than $200. And I met the person who actually, one of the people who has a dock like this. They're 5x8 sections. They're extremely light. Basically, 2 people could lift them out and get them out. So.
All right. Questions?
Did you get this email from the engineer, town engineer?
If I
Not yet. I mean, you may not. I'm sending that to you also.
Well, it says from a permitting
Yeah, it is.
standpoint, this project will need approval from Long Meadow, Concom, DEP, Army Corps, and National Heritage Endangered Species Program.
Oh, my God.
So those would all have to be done first, but that's because we're putting something into the river.
Right, this is initial cost of site survey, wetland, riverfront delineation, and permit fees that should be considered.
So I've asked him to tell me what kind of permit fees we might incur to do that.
Okay, I don't think I've
I was
seen
aware
that
of the
emails.
DEP and aware of the Conservation Commission. The other ones are new.
So there might be some fees for you.
And again, I don't know there may be some fees in there.
But that's not part of the grant
the-
request.
No, it's not. I haven't, well, I may have to revise that to put it in, but I hopefully have an answer before, tomorrow, and when I send the note
This
to
made it
Steve.
sound like that they could hold it up if the Army Corps of Engineers said you're impinging upon an endangered duck or
Yeah,
a frog or something.
My understanding is that we are dealing with these kind of people. That's
Right.
so it could be, but then we won't spend the money. I mean, we would obviously do that first.
Then you
won't
would
do
turn it
anything until you
back.
get the permits.
Then you
Yeah,
turn it back.
exactly. Until you get the permits, you're not going to do anything.
Well, yeah, and.
I mean, part of it is, I think, is the question, I'm not sure is if you're just putting a temporary dock in there, that I think may be there was actually be nothing permanently in the river. There's no footings or anything in the river. It'll be just attached to the land.
Yeah, well, and obviously, and I think this is implicit in every application that we approve, that it had, whatever permits or permissions are required have to be obtained in order to go forward with the project anyway. So, Stephen, do you have a question or comment?
A comment, actually. Bill did meet with the Conservation Commission, and we do endorse this project. It is exactly within our goals and what our intent is for that area. As far as the permits go, we would certainly try to help, but there are some things that would have to be spelled out, which I think he's got it going. So,
Okay.
we do support it.
All right, well, thank you. Any other, Beth?
I had asked you about the Park and Rec Department approval, but since you're not going to be doing all that, you don't need it anymore.
But they said they would do it. They did say if we ever get to the point of doing the racks, that they had no problem. But
Okay.
Barry said that's not an issue. She'd be glad to do that.
So the grant you're asking for this year does not include the storage racks?
It will, but as a second phase of the project. It'll be a single project. The 21.7 does include them, but I wouldn't, what I basically say in the revision is that if we do the first year, have them in, if after 2 years, if we're not, if we have decided we're not gonna put them in, then we'll just turn that money back and close the
So what
project.
did you cut out of the budget that was a $30,000 budget besides the
The big
cover?
thing was the docks are much less expensive than I had in the budget.
Oh, so the docks are much less expensive than you thought?
Yes.
Okay, so everything else is still gonna stay in the
Pretty
budget?
much the same, except I added security cameras now.
Great.
At your recommendations.
Okay, so you're gonna get us a letter from Park and Rec confirming
Yep.
their support and from Mike Rabel confirming his support?
Yep.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay.
Any?
Any other questions?
What were the other questions we asked that you were gonna get answers for?
Well, the one, I think that was it. The one was, that I did eliminate was you asked about, do we really need a cover for the racks? And I said, no, we don't.
Okay, so the one thing that's totally off here is the,
Cover. So that's replacing that by security cameras, which were not on there before.
So Bill, is it fair to say you could get by with $15,000 and then phase in the additional?
Yeah, actually, my first year is actually $9,200 is what I had in there for the first year. It's $5,000 for the docks, $1,500 for security cameras, then some trash and recycling cans, and then some publicity and signs.
which implies we could fund year one,
Yeah.
and you could come back next year for phase two.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you. Any further, anybody else who wishes to speak for or against this project or have any questions? All right, then we'll move on to project number 10. This is the restoration of the stained glass windows at the Episcopal Church. This is again under historic preservation. This is for $30,200. Is there anybody here who who wishes to speak as to this application or to ask any questions about it? Hearing nothing, we will move on. Number 11 is the historic record preservation implementation. This is, again, under historic preservation, and it is in the amount of $20,000. Is there anybody here? I can provide one, wearing my hat as a historic commission member, I know the estimate, one of the estimates that had to come in they were not going to be able to do it before now. It wouldn't be until mid-February, so there is nothing there. But is there anybody else here who
Oh, she
wishes?
was supposed to get us a new estimate.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately the group that's doing it, and Beth Hoff sent that to me, and I meant to print off a copy, but they won't be able to get it from the contractor until mid-February, which is unfortunate.
Next February?
No, this February. Yeah,
a
this
few
month, or
weeks.
mid-month, yeah, but it's like February 20th or something.
It's not going to be there for our voting.
I do not believe it's going to be there for the 20th.
So is this, are these the store's house?
No.
No.
This
No.
is documents.
No, these are records that are in the town hall.
Oh, this is Catherine's? This is
Yes.
Yes,
the
this
town
is-
records?
Yes.
This is
Oh,
the
okay.
town clerk.
Yeah.
So we don't have a real budget. It's just sort of a $20,000 number out of a hat. There's not tied to anything.
I think that's correct. I will reread the email that I got from Beth Hoff, which came in while I was away on vacation. But I will read it and I will circulate that to everybody. Are there anybody else who wishes to speak for or against this application, or have any questions about it? If not, then we'll move on to number 12, which is the Stores House cellar conversion. That, again, was submitted by Michael Jelinas. It's under the historic preservation category. And it was for $34,030, but there has been a recent amendment. I received an email from Dr. McKee yesterday and circulated it around. I hope everybody received that, but we're getting an update on that now.
So on the other half of this duo, Betsy McKee.
Good evening.
So this update is because our previous estimate for the mold remediation part of this project was a verbal estimate, and we were able to get the environmental services experts to come and give us a more detailed assessment, which is the first part of this handout. And then the person who would actually do the mold remediation work came in with an estimate that was a little higher than we had numbers for before.
So the first part of the total amount now that you're looking for, based on the email that I got last night, is about
$37,206.99.
37,000.
206.99.
Can we round that up to 207?
Sure.
See, we don't throw
I'll tell you what, if
We have it.
you
This is
end
the
up filing
number.
an application at the end and returning a penny, well,
We'll take it.
We didn't build in any contingency to this, so this is what we think it's going to cost based on all of our quotes.
Best we can come up with.
Okay, and if I recall correctly, the initial estimate that you thought for the mold remediation was $1,000, and it actually comes out to be over $4,000.
Correct.
And what was the reason again? I scanned the email, or skimmed it, but I can't say that I
What we
really
learned
worked through it.
after hiring a
Environmental hygienist?
environmental hygienist is that we're going to have to have the basement area isolated. They have to put up walls.
It's like when they do asbestos removal, they build a little tunnel of plastic from the closet we're
They have
taking
to
out to the
create negative
bulkhead.
pressure, and so.
Negative pressure?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So the mold doesn't get a chance to go anywhere. It's
Oh,
like-
suction.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
And then and it sounds like they're really going to go throughout the whole basement for any other mold sources. So we hope that with the work that's going to be done, that we really will have a mold-free environment.
And this includes the testing to make sure that we're mold-free at the end of the process.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I see. It's within 2 days after the project is completed, the building will be inspected and tested. Questions from any committee members?
The only thing, on our last meeting, there weren't any, or there were some plans to show these records in the library, have exhibits when this is done, because people don't know that these records exist in your basement. They're not going to go down your basement and look at these records.
Probably not. It's not going to be that pretty.
Right, but my feeling is, if you're going to spend this money, then the town should have access to it some way, either in the library, on exhibits, or even, I doubt if even one of our schools have a program of historical nature, of town history. I mean, I probably know more about the town history, and I've only been here 10 years, than these people who've been here for their whole life. And to get that stuff out of the library, out of the basement of your library, and disseminate it through the town. I mean,
There's several layers to that, and the first step is going to be to make a clean, dry, and secure environment in the basement, which is where the vault, the so-called
Right.
vault is, and the actual documents. Future phases will actually involve digitizing all of our records and also making them available through our relationship with our landlord, the library. So we'll have displays periodically within the library, one of which is planned for May, where we're going to have a display of historic photographs at the library.
There's an issue with the town records and storage and restoring them or copying them. We're creating an environment in the store's house to store records. So would the town have access to store the historical records of the town there?
I don't know that we'd have that kind of space. Currently, the basement is divided, if you see from the floor plan we gave with the original application, it's divided into basement, and then there's an inner vault and an outer vault that are packed to the gills. So if the vault area is what was needed, we have nowhere near the space that the town records would require. We have similar issues.
Yeah, it's similar issues, and I know, wearing my hat as a historic commission member, the records, I'm pretty sure, have to be stored in the town, I think on town property, and but the library and the store's house are not I think technically town property. I'm not.
Half and half.
Yeah, it's really a morass. I know there's been some discussion with Ms. Ingram and with Mr. Crane about where in the town hall or in the community house those records the town records might be stored better, but they haven't come to a decision on that yet.
Thank you.
What you also are being asked to help fund is after the work you helped us do in the past to put the safe top on the building again, and now to work on the basement. Both of these are things that are necessary but maybe not very exciting. What we really are going to be then launching into is another phase where we reinterpret the whole house and make it available to the community. So if we can get this kind of work done, a lot of which is not very interesting, we really didn't want to spend money on removing mold. We have a lot of other things we'd rather do. But now that we're underway, I think we have so many projects that I think the community will really be able to engage history with. This is the first step.
Any other questions of the McKees? Is there anybody else here who would like to speak concerning this application? If not, then thank you very much. Moving right along, that gets us to project number 13, which is the Greenwood Park Walking Trail. This was submitted by, and I always get the acronym, it's FALOCA. Thank you, I'm sorry about that. And that is under the recreation category. That is for $51,969.73. Ms. Nato and Ms. Perkins. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As I explained at our last meeting, we feel that this is a wonderful opportunity for the town or CPC to fund an interested group in the town, and it will affect the whole community. It's not only just for the senior population, it's for everybody. But most of all, we do want it for our seniors because of the walking trail will enable everybody to have a safe environment to exercise. You're talking about earlier the high school track. Well, all the sidewalks in the town are in disrepair, and this would be a totally safe environment in an underutilized area, which is Greenwood Park, so that we would we think this is a wonderful opportunity, and we would appreciate your funding. Nothing has changed since what we talked about before, but Emily should speak as the director of the Council on Aging as to the project.
All right. So I'm the director, the Adult Center. When Kathy and Diane came to me about this, I was extremely excited immediately. I actually had the opportunity to see one of these tracks go in to a very, I don't know a polite way to say it, but not the nicest area of West Philly. There were a lot of senior citizens around. It was a low-income housing, whatnot. And they put this track in, and all of a sudden, seniors came out of the woodwork because it was this level asphalt track that had, nice grass around it, and families came out and they walked together while the kids played. The seniors came out and walked in groups. It was one of the neatest experiences of my life, especially in an area that was just so rough. So when they said they were going to do that here, Longmeadow, we know, is not rough. But the seniors, that's the one thing we hear all the time is they love to walk, but there are no sidewalks, or it's uneven, and they get nervous. They're, what if they slip and fall and you hurt yourself? We don't want that. They don't want that. And so the thought of this track going in, what a perfect way. We have a big parking lot. They can park there, safely walk onto the route and walk around and be around other people. It's just, I support it. I can't stress that enough. I've already had people come and ask if they can form a walking group if this goes in, so. I'm supporting it.
Okay. Any questions by any of the committee members for Ms. Nato or Ms. Perkins?
Can I add one more thing, though?
Sure.
We are looking to put fitness equipment in around it that would be secured into the ground, so we wouldn't have to worry about vandalism.
Yeah, it
being
looked
taken.
like there were concrete posts.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my question. If you
Great.
weren't able, to have the equipment right away, would that cost, can that cost be pushed out to another year, or does that all have to be done all at once?
No, we could do that in phases. I think the
We
walking
would,
track.
we would appreciate the whole project done at once, because as I'm sure every person using it would like to have the whole enchilada there, to be able to walk and exercise and walk, And it would be the first big project that the town would help us with.
Will there be a person to supervise these machines, or as the seniors get on the machines or anything?
There's no supervision necessary. These are all self-contained, just exercise. I think we gave you
We have.
pictures.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're very safe. They're geared for seniors, so they're easy to get on and off of. They have, non-slip surfaces and whatnot. They're really neat piece of equipment, actually. But no, there are instructions that go on boards next to them, so people see how to use it. But they're pretty self-explanatory.
Okay. Any? Oh, sure.
Good job, boss. I just want to add one thing about the other items that are included in this grant. We put in actually an Eagle Scout put in a bocce court a few years back. If you put one thing out, it itself is not a big enough draw. And so it was used a few times at the beginning, and then in subsequent years, it was ignored. So this grant also includes revitalizing and making a better bocce court, a shuffleboard court. I think cruise ships, right? A shuffleboard court, a horseshoe pit, also picnic tables that are ADA compliant, so somebody in a wheelchair can come, and benches around. What?
They have casinos on cruise ships.
That's next year.
Yeah, no, those are van trips, yeah. So,
Don't touch that real.
but the point is to create a group area where people can play as a group, can exercise as a group. And it's like putting one thing in doesn't make it, But it would also, of course, be available for other family picnics, whatever. Greenwood Park is not locked or anything. But, so I think it would be good to have that, at least that concept, if not every piece of equipment we asked for, but something that is a big enough draw to get people out the door and into the fresh air.
Can I ask the director a question out of left field? There's always been talk of the senior center moving, or would like to move. What would happen to this project?
Well, luckily, this project is for the entire community and not just the seniors, so anybody would be able to use it. There is no plan for the immediate future.
It's on a wish list of a lot of people on your,
Of course it is.
On your
Everybody
committee.
wants new, bigger, better, especially when the other communities are getting it. But it's of the priorities of the town, it's not up there yet. It's not something that I'm actively working on. It's a wish list item.
not a twinkle in their eye even.
No.
Well, the other thing would be that seniors could still come and park in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
It really is. Our parking lot is great. It's extremely accessible, and there's already a little part for our track that is already paved, and we would just kind of hook onto it. So they already have that flat, perfectly paved surface. We would just add on to that, so they would walk, literally, they'd park their cars, walk through, and be on it. I mean, it's extremely accessible. Someone could push their spouse in a wheelchair around it if they wanted to.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that leaves Project 14, which is the Genesis House Standby Generator Project. The this is under community housing, and this is for $60,940.
That's the total project. The CPC is 55,000.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh, do I have that wrong on my?
We'll take 60.
No,
if,
it's there, it's 55,940.
Oh, I see. You know, that's a typo on my part. I apologize for that. And the rest of the money would come from Genesis House?
Jewish Geriatric Services.
Okay. Mr. Carr and Mr. Carr.
Exactly. Good evening.
Good evening.
Could the committee assure me that number 14 isn't a pre-seasonal ranking already or anything like that?
No, this was
just chronological or something.
No, it was not. It was in the order in which in the Manila envelope in which they were delivered to my house.
Fine.
That was the way I got them. I just decided there is no ranking by anything more than that.
That's very reassuring. All right. It's a long night, and we'll be very brief. We haven't changed the application in the thing. I just would like to bring in one clarification for you. Coming under the affordable housing section of the development, there's a couple either prerequisites in order for you to be eligible. One is very simple, whether or not the original affordable housing was built with CPC funds. Genesis House was not, and so therefore, it falls under the provision of preserving affordable housing. By chance, another one of my clients is pursuing virtually the exact same thing, a housing for the elderly, asking for a standby generator for their purposes. By chance, that client's counsel is Dave Martell, town council here. He has given the other client a written opinion that this is an eligible use of CPC funds. And although I feel somewhat reluctant to tell another client's business out in public, it is the town council, so if anyone should know to represent you, it would be him. Simply stated, we think this is a great use of funds. We have the backing of the fire chief and the police chief in this regard, because we can be utilized as a total community-wide resource in a case of emergencies. And we just hope you'll concur with it, our approval. Other than that, I'll be very brief.
You know, and it's very helpful. And just for the benefit of the rest of the committee, and part of this I think I circulated around. I did confirm that it was approved by. A project for the Brownstone Gardens in East Longmeadow was approved,
Exactly.
An essentially identical project last year. And I spoke today with counsel for the town of East Longmeadow, and I'm not going to discuss the whole conversation, but he, from his point of view last year as town council for East Longmeadow, he approved essentially the same project. So.
Okay.
Questions or questions or comments from the committee?
In view of the storm that we had a couple of years ago, that snowstorm, and the calamity that we had in the town here, is the use of this generator going to be available for not only the people in Genesis House, but is there a grand plan to include some of the seniors and other members of the community?
The answer is yes, and I can tell you how. During that time period, a couple of years ago, during that fiasco, one of my other clients, Emerson Manor in Longmeadow, they have two generators, one in each section. And during that time period, those 5 to 6, 7 days, depending upon where you're located, not only were our residents taken care of by the fact of the emergency generator, but the elderly citizens that lived there brought in their children and sometimes grandchildren who shared, who ate there in meals prepared in the kitchen, in the community kitchen, and actually slept on the floors in the community room. So not only did we take care of the 99 apartments of approximately 115 people, but there was related people from the outside, mostly townspeople, but not even all townspeople, but some people that lived in Wilbraham or something that could make it to Emerson to be with their kids. Usually in something like that, it's the opposite. The family comes and takes their mother or father out of that environment and takes them someplace else. We were fortunate, and we took the outsiders in and cared for them.
Further questions? Further comments from anybody else here for or against this application? Well, we got done early. Apparently we got done. Thank you, both of you, by the way.
Thank you very much.
In a apparently we've gotten done a little earlier than I expected. Are there any other general questions or comments about any of the applications or about the process that I can answer for anybody? If you could just maybe go over to the microphone, just so I don't get in trouble a fourth time.
Jean Maziarz, 81 Wheel Meadow Drive. Just clarification on the eligibility of the stained glass window project at which church? Refresh me. St. Andrews. How does that fall under the acceptability of the CPA grants?
It is eligible in two ways. The first part, and not ineligible in other ways, that is maybe a better answer. It is because that corridor of Longmeadow Street is in the National Register of Historic Places. It is an area of historical significance. Anything to preserve that properties along that corridor are eligible, and that includes privately owned properties. It doesn't have to be just town-owned properties. And the second part, and we investigated this last year at some length because this is a repeat of an application that was done last year. It is not disqualified simply because it is a religious institution, which may have been the question that we had last year.
Yeah.
And the answer that we got, and we checked with the Coalition for Community Preservation, which is our umbrella organization, is that it can be used for a religious, to restore a religious building. It can't be used for religious objects. So, for instance, if there were going to be, it could not be used to restore the altar or something like that. I think I'm answering your question.
You are. I just needed clarification on that because it was very questionable to me.
Yeah, well, there are some
and
church and state questions, but as long as it's not being used for religious purposes, explicitly, it is eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Any further questions or comments? If not, then I think any other business we have, we'll take care of at our meeting Monday night, rather than right now.
7 o'clock at this fire station?
No, 7 o'clock at the Greenwood Adult Center. Okay, and we're adjourned.
Greenwood Adult Center for Monday night?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right.